Hey guys, I am back and today I'm going to be revisiting a deck that I looked at quite a while ago, last patch, and this was the Slave Scorch deck as I called it. I played it a bit more after making that video, refined it, but it was never quite, tier 1, never, maybe not even tier 2. It was sort of a weak deck, had some really bad matchups like Henselt, for example. Um, but, with the new patch, a lot of people have been playing slaves, and I decided I'm going to revisit my version of the slave deck, see if it's any good, see if I can make any tweaks to it to make it better. Um, and yeah, I've been playing it a lot today on stream. It was very, very powerful. Won a lot of games, gained a lot of MMR on the pro ladder, which was cool. And yeah, I just thought I'd share the deck, how it works, and all that stuff. Because it functions quite differently to the version I have on the YouTube already. Of course, everything with Gwent is changing a lot. It's the same with most card games, but figured we could revisit it and have a look at some of the changes. So, you remember last time I was playing sort of Yennefer with Scorch and things like this. I think at one point I even had Villain Trettenmirth in the deck, um, which wasn't actually very good, but the more you know. And this version we've got some things different. If we're still running like Albert Pikeman, the Slave Infantry, the Sentry, and this is kind of the core of the deck along with recruits and ointments. So the basic premise of the deck, if you're not aware, is you use Slave Infantry, which is a soldier, spawns 3 copies of it, 1 on each row when you play it. And you use this card in conjunction with Sentry, which boosts all copies of a soldier by 2. Effectively, you're able to boost all of the Slave Infantry that you have on board with the Sentries. So the idea is to play 3 Slave Infantries out and then boost them all with Sentries for tons and tons of points. And then you've got Thinning with the Pikemen. A lot of people have asked why are you playing this card and not things like Vic of Iron Novice or Magni Division. The simple reason is you want to be able to do your thinning in round 1, or around where you don't have a developed graveyard yet, because you're doing all your thinning and your setup and all that stuff, right? So if you're playing Vicovaros or Magnis for those ointments, which are reviving units, you're not going to have a graveyard yet when you want to be thinning your deck and playing those cards. So you might get a couple more points with Vico or with Magni in ideal situations, but the chances that you brick with the hand or, things are awkward or you need to mulligan in a different way is a lot more likely. So I think this version is a lot more consistent and powerful overall. But yeah, as I was saying, so you have the slave infantry boosted by the sentries, and then you're going to res the slave infantry later in the game with ointment and do it all over again effectively. You have a sire to often shuffle back sentries if you run out of them, or you just save a sentry or two for round 3, and you can do some really powerful plays with things like Joachim, or Triss into reconnaissance and all that good stuff. So that's kind of the bronze core. Pikemen are there for thinning. They give a backup boost target for the sentries, should you need that. You have recruits for thinning as well, and a reconnaissance to enable Triss, and also just, for more thinning. That's one thing the deck does very well. It thins through a large amount of the cards every time, and really consistently getting the slave infantry and sentries together at a good time, allowing you to win those rounds. So really cool deck. That's the bronze core. We have Caveat, of course, just a solid leader. You could probably run Kahir in this deck if you wanted to cut out Igni, but we do have that Igni for a lot of points, big point swing. Very nice in the Consume matchups, very nice in the Greatsword matchup, just to give you some extra staying power in rounds and allow you to blow out the opponent without using too many of your sentries, allowing you to save them for later on in the game. We then have Vilgefortz. I've been using this offensively a lot of the time, burning the opponent's unit. Can be very powerful in that department if you are, aware of what their deck's running, or if you can shuffle something back into their deck with the Sire to potentially brick them. But more often than not, you're going to just be enabling ointments with Vilgefortz, putting something in your graveyard, while also, cycling the deck, getting lots of points. It's a standard in Nilfgaard, very powerful card. We have Triss, obviously going to be really good in this deck because we have Ointment and Reconnaissance as bronzes, so She's going to be used to effectively gain more slave infantries or potentially recon into sentries when you need those cards in either round 1 or round 3, or maybe in between. So yeah, very solid and one of the gold backbone cards. Same with Rainfarn, he is there for spy access with Cantarella, so that you're never caught out without your spy, and so you can bleed and do things like that a lot more frequently, and a lot of thinning as well he provides. And of course Joachim for big point plays should you need that. So that's really nice. You have a Sire. A lot of the time you're going to be able to use her to shuffle your own cards back. You're going to shuffle sentries back, maybe even the slave infantry on occasion. Maybe Roach should you not need to shuffle anything else back. And a lot of times you can also use her, offensively shuffling back enemy cards, bricks that you want them to draw into, either with Vilgefortz or on their mulligan phase. Or you can also shuffle back cards that they would want to revive, things like big greatswords, or whatever else. Pirate captains so they can't restore Barclay so they can't Hattori it, those sorts of things. So yeah, very, very flexible silver in a lot of Nilfgaard decks as well. We have Roach for the thinning, for the points, for the Asaya synergy, and we have Vanhamar for weather clear, and yeah, just also being able to put that frost down in a long round can be very powerful. Shrike, it's also an okay option. You're going to get 16 points on your silver, which is not too bad. So Vanhamar's there for a bit of insurance against things like Axeman or long round decks which use weather, things like Dagon as well. And against decks that don't have weather, you can use your own weather and get some more value in long rounds. So really nice card to have, pretty good inclusion. And then Vreemdi is the final silver. Creates a Nilfgaard bronze silver card. Bronze silver card? Bronze silver card. Bronze soldier card. Well, what am I saying? This is really useful. You can create effectively a new sentry, a new slave infantry, a new recruit, and these are kind of your 3 targets that you usually go for. Very powerful. You typically want to play him after your 3rd slave infantry to maximize the chances of you hitting either a slave infantry or a sentry at the perfect time. So really powerful silver card in this deck. It sometimes will brick or not be that great, but other times, when you get your 4th slave infantry, it's so many points, or a 4th sentry, or even sometimes, you can get Alba Pikemen out as, 4 of them, which can be pretty funny. So really good card overall. And yeah, that's the whole deck. We'll go into get some gameplay and see how it works. Okay, we've got a crack and crate opponent over here, pro ladder game. So the idea of the mulligan is typically to have all the copies of either sentry or slave infantry. Usually slave infantry is better to have, so that your recruits can guaranteed pull one of them. Might have gone over this before, but yeah, so you want to get that, of course. You want to not have ointments because they're going to be unplayable around 1. So they're usually the blacklist. And, you can mulligan Alba Pikeman if you want more mulligan space, have access to more mulligans. So here we're going to drop Sentry. We don't need any more of them because we can pull them with Recruit and Reconnaissance. And then Alba Pikeman to get another chance at a mulligan. And then Cantarella is perfectly fine. So we're going to hold on to this hand pretty good. We don't want to brick on Roach or anything like that. Now, we are against Crack and Crate, so the good old greatswords now. The strategy here is probably going to be we want to set up our slave infantry, do a couple of sentries, and then get out the round when we think we've put on enough pressure and have enough points to either force some cards down or into a spot where they're wanting to pass. So we're going to start just by opening with those slave infantry. We also want to get the Alba Pikeman out as well if we can do that, but we'll avoid playing Recruit until we have all the infantry on the board. Greatswords can be kind of tricky. We don't play Vicar Medic. We have a Sire, which can Graveyard Hate a little bit, but we don't have any removal apart from Igni and, potentially Vilgefortz, but not really, to disrupt the engines that the opponent will have. So this can be a tricky one. It turns out it's actually Veterans, which is a little bit of an easier matchup, I would say, for this deck. You don't have to worry about the engines and the carryover that the Greatsword deck will have. You're only concerned about their points, and you can do points pretty well with the Slaves deck. So we'll continue with the Slave Infantry. There's not really anything we need to worry about here that we should play around. If you're against Scoia'tael, maybe you want to be playing around Shiru for Epidemic, which is a pretty common card in those decks. And you can do that by maybe, going with Recruit early, when you wouldn't otherwise do that. Here, okay, we've seen Burner Bran come out. Gonna be pretty annoying and remove some of the value that we'd otherwise get, but we can, maybe put a slave infantry in the front here. I think that's what we're going to go with here, just just to, give us a potential ointment target if it does die. We are going to go cards down if he chooses to pass, but that's not a huge issue. I think if he does, we can decide to 2-0 the, you know, the Skellige deck, which needs to set up veterans and reses and all that stuff, and we have a sire to maybe brick the Freyas and all that good stuff. So we're just gonna, typically, unless you're against a deck that you know for sure can't take you on in a long round, like we know here, you don't really want to be doing this. You want to be making sure that you can stay ahead. A card down, or on even if you're on red coin. It's always good to win on even if you can. But the most important thing is both staying ahead and making sure you don't get pushed out of round one. Make sure you try to develop these slave infantry so that your recruits and your sentries hit for really really big points. So that's what we'll see now. We'll play a recruit. This might hit Alba Pikeman. If it does, that's a shame. We could even put it here to kind of mitigate some of the damage. Not really relevant. We'll just play the recruit here. We do get the Alba Pikeman. Not really what we want to see because we'd rather get the points, but it's okay. We're going to have Calviet, Reconnaissance, and probably Joachim from Rainfarn all going to be finding a lot of points with those sentries. So while it might look like we're in a bit of a weird and maybe even bad spot, especially with some of our slaves dying here, it's really not bad at all. We're going to be able to get a lot of points now and effectively push back in this round where we've been pressured with the early weather. Burner's definitely a good card against us, but yeah, here we can go with the Reconnaissance. We'll take Recruit if we find it, otherwise just Sentry to thin out the deck, get all those points, and get rolling. We're probably happy to commit Joachim, should we need to do that. Cantarella as well, pretty free to do. The scariest thing would be carryover from him. That would definitely not be fun. We of course can also ointment our slave infantry if we want to do that now, which just gives us a bit of space on the Calviet if we need to have space. So here we're going to go with the leader. We're looking for another recruit or another sentry. We do find a sentry, so we'll take that. Get all those points again. And, if we want to, we can commit this Joachim play with the Rainfarn and we'll probably win the round convincingly. We might want to commit Cantarella before that so that we can potentially pressure a win on even cards. If the opponent continues to play and doesn't have card advantage, then again, we probably shouldn't do that because we saw with Calviet that Joachim and Roach were the top cards on the deck. So that would be a little bit risky to do. I think here we should probably just go with the Rainfarn, given, what I just said. We'll get the Roach out, we'll get the last sentry out, or even not. Getting Vanhammer, that's also perfectly fine, but this should give us enough points to force the opponent out, or give us a chance to Cantarella and then, push some kind of very nice board state, game state for us. We'll see how it goes, and if the opponent does pass, we're probably going to mulligan that Cantarella away and go straight to round 3 using a sire to brick Freyas and all that. We're still able to do that since only veterans have been played, aside from 2 bronzes that he can revive, which we can of course deny. So looking pretty okay for us. Kind of not the perfect situation. We've been in some weird spots here, and having to use Joachim early is not necessarily, great for us. Here we will go with the Cantarella though, since it's kind of the perfect spot to do that. We assume he can probably make 18 points in one card, not too difficult for him. So good to get rid of the Cantarella, and it will allow us to push a little bit more should we want to do that. Here we're going to take Vreemdi. Could be really solid if we get Sentry or Recruit from him, being able to buff all our dudes once again. And the Counter Spy is going to come down. So we do have the option now to pass should we want to do that. Force our opponent to play a big card. I don't think we really need to go for that option. We're going to instead play Vreemdi and see what we get. And we do find a recruit, which is really nice. So we'll pick that up, grab a last sentry, and buff all the dudes there. So really, we're going to want to just replicate what we've done in this round in round 3. We're going to Asire back sentries. We're going to ointment those slave infantry, and we're going to repeat and hopefully win the game with the points. We'll see. I mean, veterans, they do have a lot of points themselves, and they can kind of interrupt your slave infantry a little bit with their hunters. So that's something to think about. I think we'll probably take the pass here if the opponent doesn't pass, just because, we're running out of plays that we would like to make. We don't have any more sentries for big points, so we'd just be playing slave infantry with ointment or something, which isn't really ideal. And we'd like to save a sire to shuffle sentries back, so none of these cards are really playable in hand anymore. But yeah, we'll see what the opponent does. And also, Freya, not bricked right now, but you know, you're looking at a hand of multiple Freyas, it might be awkward for the crack player. So we'll also pass. And you know, we're just going to dry pass to round 3 and see what the score is. Should be difficult now to deny his revives, just because he's got so many in the graveyard now. Igni might be a card that's very useful here. We're going to hold on to it. Likewise with Recruit, and this hand looks pretty fine. We're then going to draw into Ointment next round after we dry pass here, so we're just going to replicate what we did in round 1. We're going to play those slave infantry and we're going to pull out some sentries. And that's typically what you want to be doing with this deck. You can sometimes bleed a little bit and play like a Joaquin finisher or something, but it's quite rare. Usually you just want to repeat the game plan in 2 rounds. And of course I'm not using a tracker. It's easier if you do, although I wouldn't recommend it because it's, you know, the lazy way, but you can definitely do that. And yeah. So right now we have 3 ointments in the deck. That's literally all our deck is at the moment. So we're going to be drawing into those. And of course we're going to shuffle back some sentries, maybe Roach as well, Sentry and Roach, or maybe double Sentry if we need that with Vilgefortz. Vilgefortz for ointment is also okay, so we'll see how things go. We would like a good Vilgefortz target, and the Recruit is ideal, but might not happen. Yeah, we'll see what goes on. Igni, we're probably going to be able to find value with this card advantage that we have, so should be a pretty good card to have, especially if 2 11s line up. That could be really the thing that wins us the game here. So yeah, we'll have to make some decisions with the Sire and with Vilgefortz, but holding on to this hand seems like a wise move. It's we can mulligan for an ointment, but that doesn't seem really very, you know, reasonable at this stage. Probably most likely go ointment, res some slaves, Triss, you know, res some slaves, and then we'll see where to go from there. Maybe we want to go for a Sire on double sentry. I think that's probably the way we'll do it here. It might be risky to go Roach just because the Vilgefortz. I mean, not risky, but I think we lose points there because we want to be, you know, having like 2 sentries with 2 slave infantries rather than 3 slave infantries with 1 sentry, if that makes sense. It's more points to have double sentry and 2 slave infantries than the other way. So we'll probably try to set that up. It might not happen. We'll really see how it goes. So Triss comes down, big points are incoming from the opponent. And, you know, veterans, they're going to pump the points out. We are going to be a little bit, you know, scared of this. But here, we're just going to grab slave infantry, pull those dudes. So yeah, if we shuffle back double sentry here, if Vilgefortz pulls an ointment, we can revive the recruit to pull the sentry. So we should be guaranteed double slave infantry and double sentry in this round, which is, you know, not bad. It's not quite 3 slave infantry level good, but, you know, it's still a lot of points. The question is, will it be enough to beat the crack deck? And that's something we'll be finding out pretty soon, I'm sure. So yeah, no point really graveyard-hating him, as you'll see. He's got, you know, a lot of bronzes which he could tap into for the res, should he want to do that. The restore as well is going to be worth a lot of points. Pretty much all of his cards are going to be worth, you know, a hell of a lot. So we're really going to have to find some nice Igni value, or yeah, just see how this goes basically. So Triss now for the ointment, as we said. We pick up the slaves, pop them down, and you know, on the bright side, we are going to be looking at weaker Coral and cards like this for the opponent, any sort of controlling cards. Hunters do hurt, that's the only issue. They're going to deny some of the value we would otherwise get on the sentries and the slave infantry, and for that reason we may even choose to shuffle Roach back if we see that he's going for lots of hunter kills on our slaves. Really see how it goes. Bit of a tricky matchup. Skellige can be I would say is probably one of the harder ones for the slaves. You've got Death Wish, which is a little bit more straightforward. You've got Alchemy, which is very easy to win. And you've got Scoia'tael, can be tricky as well with Shiru, but potentially not too bad. That one as well. So yeah, we're going to get a Sire and go with that game plan of double sentry, since we haven't seen him do anything, you know, concerning hunters or whatnot to kill them. So we'll be going for that. You'll see we're pretty far behind right now. We're going to reap the reward on our sort of setup plays with the slave infantry, so we'll bridge that gap pretty quickly. The question will be whether it will be enough points or not. We'll see how it goes. I think it might be hard to beat the amount that veterans has got, but you never know. You never know. Especially if our Igni finds some value, then we'll be looking pretty close, pretty okay. Especially if the opponent has some kind of, suboptimal card, something like Coral's even not terrible, but you know what I mean. And yeah, we'll see what we've got going on. We are going to get the Igni value. The question is, how much value will that be? Looks like it won't be a huge amount, only 16. But we're going with the Vilgefortz onto recruit, as we have planned, into that ointment, onto recruit, and grabbing the last sentry. As you see, pretty damn close. The hunters do hurt though, they're effectively dealing 7 damage each time, so 16 point cards, which is definitely strong. And then champion at the end, not gonna quite be able to cut it, as you'll see the Igni's not enough points. But yeah, that's a game against veterans. Hope that just gives you an idea of how the deck functions, and potentially even that Skellige can be a tricky matchup. But yeah, jump into the next one.
No negotiation.
So, another game, this time against Mr. Adzakov. Going to be going up against Ithne. So, the thing we've got to watch out here for is the big Shiru. That's really the scary thing. We're going to mulligan Ointment first, as said before, and then probably Roach, and then I guess a Slave Infantry. We really need to play around the Shiru using Recruit and things like this, if we can afford to do that. Otherwise, we're going to be in a little bit of trouble. So we'll start with Alba Pikeman, get them out the deck. Not too bad. We can play around Shiru a bit by playing early sentries, should we want to do that. Although it looks like we're going against Spellitel, so that's going to be a bit of a different matchup. We might not have to worry about Epidemic. In fact, seeing this makes me much more reluctant to play around it. So I think we're just going to go ahead and play the Slave Infantry out as we normally would. Reconnaissance for Recruit will of course be Slave Infantry, since we have 3 copies of Sentry. And oh, it looks like we've got a bit of ale going on. Very interesting. Okay, I like to see some, innovation and whatnot from the pro players. Very nice. So we do have Frost to potentially shut this down, and we could maybe even go with that immediately, just to deny the first proc there that it would normally get. We'll just slow down the buffs a little bit from the opponent here. Buffing up our sentry as well. Now he is running a lot of cards, seems like 26, so a bit of a, a Nova deck that we're up against, so got to be wary of that. Of course, that'll be a finisher that's pretty nasty. Here we're just going to go ahead and open with the Reconnaissance, get more slaves out, take that Recruit, grab the slaves, get them going. All good stuff. And probably then Leader, try to look for another one. If we don't find another one, we can work around that a little bit. Maybe we even want to go Rainfarn into Cantarella before, just to thin out and get some better options with the Caveat. Things like missing Roach and Cantarella would be quite a nice thing to be able to do. And yeah, we would love to have all of the Slave Infantry online before playing our sentries, of course. So here I think we're reasonably happy to go with that play, Cantarella play. We'll do some thinning. We get the spy down, which is never bad. And here, bit of an awkward choice, as you'll see. I think we're happy to take Joachim, though. Of course, it's just a stronger play than the Slave Infantry, which we're going to be pulling out anyway with a Recruit, should we want to play that Joachim this round. Maybe we do, maybe we don't. And here, I think it's probably worth doing. We can really put some pressure on. Otherwise, this card would not be playable in this round, so it's going to pull Recruit into Infantry, of course. And now once we start dropping sentries, we're really going to be able to keep up in terms of points, which is what you want to be doing against a deck like Adzakov's here, which is trying to go for the big long rounds. So next we're actually going to go Vreemd just to have that chance at the extra Slave Infantry or Sentry. We do not hit either of those. We could even take Magni for Ointment, but that's not good here, so Standard Bearer will be the pick. Presumably we'll get thundered by, the opponent, but that's okay. Not too worried about that. The sentries are really going to give us a lot of value. Not sure whether it'll be enough to counteract the sort of buffs we're seeing here, but we'll see. we're just going to start dropping them, getting those points. We are ahead now, which is really nice. And basically every play we make is going to be a ton of points, so we're really pushing Azakov to keep up on that front. So, very, very good. And yeah, we'll just do some more buffs with the sentries. Looking very nice. And yeah, not bad at all. Should I, if I say so myself? This, sentry that this other sentry that we've got in hand, the Dolbathana, is not going to be very good for us, but we should be okay, I think. Of course, his sentries are going to be very big to the later we go, but another big point slam from us, and we're pretty far in the lead. We can maybe take 2-card advantage if he can't catch up. If he can, then we're going to go with the Caveat, have a look at what our options are. We could maybe even drop the dead card. You really hate having that in your deck when you're playing stuff like Vilgefortz and Joachim. Joachim's out now, so a little bit less of a worry, but this card is a soldier, so you kind of got to worry, that the recruits might pull it later on. So it's a possibility. Here, I think we're happy to keep the pressure on. We're going to play the Caveat. Look for something good. And Triss, we're going to find a spell from him, so it's not that bad of a deal. We will take the Thunder, and, we'll kill nothing. Probably won't hit anything. We don't want to kill anything. We might just give him a res target if he's running reses. It's always possible. If we can take 2 cards here, that would be really nice. Probably not going to happen. Funnily enough, it seems this deck can keep up with our stuff, which is pretty impressive. I'm not going to lie. So we have the option of playing the Sentry out. We're going to have to play a Sire as well if we do that. We could play a Sire now to force the last card potentially, if we want. The issue here is we're kind of running out of finisher cards. We've done our our whole job of sentries and slave infantry. This round we don't really have much for round 3. We're going to be able to find Vilgefortz or Igni maybe, which is probably what we're going to be relying on to win. So I'm happy to play the Asaya and say, you know what, we're okay with it. We're going to shuffle. What are we going to shuffle? We'll shuffle some Ales, I guess. Not the best cards ever, I think, for the opponent. So give those to him, and yeah, he'll probably commit his last card here. He does, and we'll pass. Not too bad of a result, although, as I said, we are kind of lacking finishers right now, especially with, Asaya not being able to shuffle back sentries now. We're just going to have some slave infantry with the ointments, which, is not exactly ideal, and an Igni, which also isn't really what you want to see. Vilgefortz, though, is going to be our kind of pièce de la résistance. I don't know what those words mean, and we're going to play out the sentry that we don't want for round 3. So hopefully that Asaya play will give us a lot of room here. If he has those Golden Froth cards, we're going to have some chance to win here with offensive Vilgefortz maybe, or just defensive, depending on what we see going on. We're going to have to hold this because our Igni is looking a little bit dodgy at the end of the game here. So, Ointment, pick up some slave infantry, and it looks like Azakov is not feeling very lucky. Maybe something is wrong. He has an ADC that's doing nothing, it seems. Now, I don't expect Shiru, so yeah, I think it's pretty unlikely he has that card. You never know. Could be an epidemic waiting for us, but I don't think we can really afford to play around it at this stage, so just go with another Ointment, see what the score is. Does like a Dolbathana, and we're going to offensively burn that. He'll draw a Golden Froth that we put in his deck, and we should be good to go. So it shows that you can kind of have a pretty decent chance at winning, even if you have to commit all your sentries in round 1 and don't have those for round 3. There's always something that can work. Cheeky Asaya plays or whatnot. And it is kind of rare that you get that perfect round 3 with this deck. Oh, a Clace, I mean, pretty good card. Might be enough. I guess we'll find out. I would be surprised, but you never know. 20 points. It's a pretty close game, but to be expected, I suppose. And yeah, another victory against Azakov. That's the 3rd time today I've actually beaten him with this deck. Cool story. Anyway, that will be the video, and yeah, thanks a lot for watching, guys. Don't let the first game dissuade you from trying this deck out. It is very strong, and if you did stay around to the end, you got to watch a bit of a nice game there against my good friend Azakov. So thank you a lot for watching, and I'll see you next time, guys.